Lesson 4: The French and the Dutch. What to know? Why did the French and the Dutch set up colonies? By the end of this lesson, you will be able to describe how European nations struggled for control of North America and describe the relations between French and Dutch settlers and American Indians. The French and the Dutch. You are there. The year is 1608, and you're traveling with your father on a trading mission. Your people, the Huron, have started trading furs with the French, and your father wants you to learn how to bargain with the newcomers. When you arrive at the trading place, you sit quietly and watch. The men use hand signals to communicate, and when a trade is agreed on, they nod their heads. Your father has brought several furs, so you expect to take many new things back home. You just hope you'll be able to carry them all. New France. While Spain and England were building colonies in North America, France was claiming more land in what are today Canada and the northeastern United States. French claims to this region, which became known as New France, began with Jacques Cartier. He explored the St. Lawrence River in the early 1500s and began an important trading partnership with the Huron Indians. French merchants wanted the wealth that came from the fur trade. The French king wanted to increase his country's power. He encouraged merchants to start colonies in North America. Eventually, a group of merchants hired Samuel de Champlain to find a place to build a settlement. In 1608, Champlain founded Quebec along the St. Lawrence River. Quebec was the first French settlement in North America, but by 1625, its population had grown to only about 60 people. Starting in the 1630s, French Catholic missionaries began arriving in New France. These missionaries often lived with Indian tribes to learn their language. The aim of the missionaries was to convert the Indians to the Catholic religion. Some French fur traders also lived with Indian tribes and learned their language and ways of life. Since these traders spent much of their time traveling with the Indians, they did not build many permanent settlements. Unlike Spain's and England's colonies, New France grew slowly. Most French people were not interested in settling in North America. In the 1600s, the French built only two major settlements in all of North America, Quebec and Montreal. New Netherland. Not long after the English started colonies in North America, the Dutch began to build settlements in their own colony called New Netherland. They settled along the Hudson River in parts of what are today New York and New Jersey. Woohoo, New Jersey! Henry Hudson had claimed this area for the Netherlands in 1609. The Dutch aim in establishing a colony was to gain profits from the sale of furs to Europe. At this time in history, fur hats were in style all over Europe. In 1621, the Dutch government gave the Dutch West India Company control over all fur trade areas in New Netherland. By 1626, Peter Minuit was governor of New Netherland. During his time as governor, the Dutch bought Manhattan Island from the Indians who were living there. As in other places, the Indians' ideas about land were different from those of the new settlers. The Indians believed that the land was for all people to use. They thought the Dutch were paying them only for the use of the resources on the land, not for the land itself. In 1626, the Dutch began laying out a town in the south end of Manhattan Island. They called the settlement New Amsterdam, after the city of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. New Amsterdam was built next to a harbor where the Hudson River flows into the Atlantic Ocean. This location was good for trade. Traders sailed down the Hudson to New Amsterdam to unload their furs and to get supplies. Ships waited in the harbor to carry the furs to Europe. By the 1630s, New Amsterdam had about 200 people and 30 houses. It also had a counting house where workers would keep track of furs and money, and warehouses for storing food and furs. For protection, the colonists built a fort with high walls made of stone. In 1638, Swedish settlers founded the colony of New Sweden to the south of New Netherland. New Sweden included parts of present-day Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. When the Swedes began building settlements, the Dutch worried these new settlers would enter the fur trade. Dutch colonists and the Algonquian Indians had established a strong fur trading relationship, but this relationship would soon face trouble. By the late 1630s, conflicts with Indians had grown because the settlers had cleared more land for farms. The colonists and the Indians attacked each other's farms and villages. The colonists then sent out an army that destroyed Indian villages all over New Netherland. In 1645, after many colonists and Indians had been killed, the two sides signed a peace treaty. By then, the Algonquian population of New Netherland had been nearly wiped out. Exploring New France. As English and Dutch colonists moved into parts of New France, fighting over the fur trade began among the settlers. Indian tribes also experienced internecine, conflicts or fighting between groups. Both the Huron and the Iroquois Indians wanted to control lands in present-day Canada. The Huron were allies, or partners with the French, while the Iroquois were partners with the Dutch and the English. Fierce fighting between these groups nearly destroyed the Huron population and the French fur trade. The new French king, Louis XIV, did not want to lose France's North American lands, so he made New France a royal colony. He sent Count de Frontenac to explore the western part of New France. He knew that there was a large river west of Quebec that Indians called Mississippi, meaning Father of Waters. He hoped the Mississippi would prove to be the Northwest Passage. In 1673, a small group, led by Catholic missionary Jacques Marquis and fur trader Louis Joliet, set out to find the Mississippi. With help from the Indians, they did find the Mississippi. However, because the river kept taking them south, they knew it was not the Northwest Passage. They floated down the river to the present-day state of Mississippi. There, they met some Indians who told them that Europeans lived further south. Fearing the Europeans might be Spanish soldiers, the French turned back. Later, French explorer René Robert Cavelier, known as Sieur de La Salle or Sir La Salle, set out to find the mouth of the Mississippi River. In 1682, La Salle led an expedition that traveled south from the Illinois River. During the difficult trip, a member of the expedition wrote that after running out of food, they were living only on potatoes and alligators. After 2 months, the explorers reached the mouth of the Mississippi at the Gulf of Mexico. La Salle claimed the entire Mississippi River Valley for France and named the region Louisiana in honor of King Louis XIV. In 1684, La Salle tried to start a settlement near the mouth of the Mississippi River, but hardships led to disagreements among the settlers. 3 years later, La Salle was killed and the settlement failed. A colony and a capital. The French king then sent another expedition to Louisiana. Pierre Le Moyne and his brother Jean-Baptiste reached the northern coast of the Gulf of Mexico in 1699. Soon after, they found the mouth of the Mississippi River. The members of the expedition built a settlement along the river, and in time, more settlers came, but they experienced many of the same hardships that La Salle had faced. In 1712, the French king made Louisiana a proprietary colony. This meant that he gave the whole colony to one person, who would own it. In 1717, John Law, a Scottish banker, became Louisiana's owner. Law formed a company to build plantations and towns, and he brought in thousands of new settlers. In 1722, New Orleans was one of the colony's first towns, became Louisiana's capital. Despite Law's efforts, however, the colony still needed more workers. Many plantation owners began to bring in enslaved Africans to do the work. The French government soon passed laws that restricted where Africans in Louisiana could live and what kind of work they could do. Like the rest of New France, Louisiana failed to attract enough people for it to prosper. By 1763, there were only 80,000 French colonists living in New France, an area stretching from Canada to Louisiana. By the same year, in a much smaller area, there were more than 1,500,000 English colonists in North America. Summary: the French and Dutch both began building settlements in North America in the 1600s. Both groups wanted to control the fur trade, and this often led to fighting between the settlers and the Indians. The French and Dutch had trouble bringing settlers to North America, so the population of their colonies remained low.